when we switch over to IPV, which will be very soon, and segregate hepatitis for 0, 1 and 6 month schedule, which is possible
I think that
now.
says all about the pentavalent. I'll just add one more sentence, which I've been reading from Dr. Jacob Pollier's writing, that pentavalent vaccine has caused unexpected deaths in Sri Lanka and others. So we'll leave it as that. That's all.
Name a vaccine which has not caused unexpected death.
Anyway, next question is on, let's go to hepatitis B, Dr. Gaurav. You know that WHO has been recommending hepatitis B as the 7th UIP vaccine for a long time. And because we could not start at birth, we said let's start at 6 weeks. And many countries in the world, especially African countries, have started giving this vaccine at 6, 10, 14 weeks and all that. Is there any published data to say that this delayed universal infant immunization is associated with decrease in chronic carrier rates in the community?
To the best of my knowledge, there is no data which says that delaying the vaccination and not giving it at birth is a good idea and it will help in reducing chronic carrier state. We all know that the carrier state is predominantly related to vertical transmission of hepatitis B, which occurs from the mother to the child. The earlier a child gets hepatitis B, the newborn gets hepatitis B disease, infection, the more likely is he to remain a carrier. And therefore, it is very important that to prevent vertical transmission, a 0 dose of hepatitis B vaccine must be given. And so, as Dr. Chitkara also said, 016 schedule is what we should all aim for. And with the increasing number of deliveries which are occurring in hospital.
Gaurav, you made the point.
Yes.
That I will leave it as that. I will re-emphasize that hepatitis B vaccine is best given starting birth. Even 1 week delay in the first dose can decrease the efficacy by 25% as per Taiwanese studies. So we leave it as that. The next is the question which we have. You know, there is a recent outbreak of pertussis in USA in 7 to 11-year-old and not among 11 to 15-year-old. Now this will be used by various the vaccine companies to motivate you to either one or the other vaccine. I would like to have Dr. Chitkara, your opinion, and maybe Dr. Kukreja on this. What is the implication, if any, of this current outbreak in USA of this pertussis in India? What is the implication? Dr. Chitkara first and then Dr. Shyam.
Since 2006, I have been a member of Global Pertussis Initiative and trying to understand kind of a shifting epidemiology of pertussis world over, including developing countries. It is the more you understand, the more enigma pertussis is becoming. We must remember that when acellular pertussis vaccines were introduced, it was known that it is slightly less effective than a whole cell vaccine. But at that time, there was a trade-off between safety and efficacy. Because of the reactogenicity issues, people were not taking it. So that lower efficacy of an acellular pertussis vaccine, but not very drastic difference, was accepted because of the side effects. So therefore, meaning, and the coverage has been good in developed countries. What he's telling us in US, there have been 2 outbreaks, 2010-11 in California and 2012 in Washington. There the issues are different. So there are various possibilities, whether it is a failure of the vaccine, whole cell versus acellular pertussis, or is it a failure to vaccinate. The issue is not very simple, and just since I analyzed these 2 particular epidemics there, I must tell you that in the California epidemic, which is the biggest, more than 10,000 cases, it was 7 to 11 years where they had a peak, and the DPT 5th dose, which was given at 4 years. So 3 years had elapsed, 3 to 5 years, when these children between 7 to 11 years had this kind of an outbreak of pertussis. We have conventionally learned that after a vaccination, whether it is a whole cell or whether it is a acellular pertussis, the protection should last about 6 to 12 years, various studies. Recently, large number of data has accumulated and varies from 1 year to 9 years persistent of antibodies. So which population behaves differently is one issue. Here probably there were various factors which caused this outbreak. One, waning immunity, which was fast because 3-4 years had elapsed. Number two, the efficacy of acellular or whole cell have always been inflated. What we learn 85% protection, it is not. The real effectiveness or efficacy is somewhere by 60 to 65%. And even if you miss 10 to 20% of the population, you keep on adding to that threshold susceptible population, which we know that every 4 to 5 years there are outbreaks of pertussis in various countries. And this is because of a vaccine effective at about 70% with 10, 20, 30% missing the dose, waning immunity. So these are the possibilities. Why did they develop? There has been another hypothesis doing around that probably the pertussis organism has changed. It is a very stable organism, not many changes reported in last 3 or 4 decades. Yes, occasional reports are there. So it doesn't mean that if they were using whole cell vaccine, these outbreaks would not have occurred. Why? Because Pakistan, this Khairpur 2012 report, there was an outbreak of pertussis. Reasonably well immunized population and only whole cell received. So if whole cell versus acellular was the culprit, then why did they get outbreak? So these are various possibilities which have been given, and it is now considered that acellular pertussis, to increase the efficacy, probably we may need to add more antigens which have been identified now as adenyl cyclase and lipopolysaccharide, which was considered to be responsible for the reactogenicity. So there are 7-8 hypotheses which are being tested, but the net conclusion is a regular boosting with pertussis is a must. All countries, especially those with a very high coverage rate, because there are no natural boosters by the circulation of the wild organisms. So these are the few possibilities. Why did they have?
Dr. Kukreja,
And this Washington outbreak here,
I would like to summarize in one sentence.
This Washington outbreak, it was more between 13 and 14 years, and their Tdap was only 50%. Coverage was poor.
Okay. Implication for India in one sentence. Implication for India in one sentence, if any.
I'll say,
Because this is
I think
very
Dr. Chitkara has summarized that there's definitely something question mark regarding the efficacy of acellular pertussis. Although he has not clearly told it, but it appears there's something wrong with the efficacy of acellular pertussis vaccine. And more data is indicating that. There are several hypotheses, and one of the hypotheses which is major is we are detecting more mild cases which used to occur by PCR now in the developed world, and that is the standard of method of detecting. This is one. Second, in US, personal belief exemptions are allowed, and in many states, 28% of the children have not received the vaccine, 2. And third is this definitely the nucleic acid changes have been reported by Muri and Muri in pertussis toxin as well as in pertectin. So there have been changes. And it appears most possibly acellular pertussis efficacy is suspect. So this is what is there. And we have to accept it.
We can leave it.
Now, there's no data on whole cell. If there have been changes in the genetic structure of the bacteria, now there's no data on whole cell pertussis. There's only one study in Pakistan, in Khairpur, where they found there are a lot of breakthrough cases of pertussis, and several brands of good pertussis vaccine have been given, whole cell pertussis vaccine has been given. There's only one study. Because most of the developing world is using whole cell pertussis vaccine, most of the developed world is using acellular pertussis vaccine, so we have a lot of data on acellular pertussis, we do not have data on whole cell pertussis. Is there a need to change the vaccine? Question mark. Is there a need to give more doses? Question mark.
Okay, fine. I think we'll leave it as that. One more vaccine can I take, or maybe one question we can ask Delegates, and one, can oral polio vaccine and rotavirus be given together?
Asking?
Yeah, any one of you? Yes, okay, fine, that's all. Let's go to the next question. Dr. Gaurav, you know, the influenza vaccine has been recommended for high-risk group by Indian Academy of Pediatrics. Why should we be recommending influenza vaccine, which is so much strain, I mean, the drift and shift and all that, one. Secondly, which particular vaccine, southern, northern hemisphere, or is it east or west? I don't know. Why are we clubbing the whole northern hemisphere together? Is there a difference between American epidemiology and Indian epidemiology because of west and east difference also? Or is it that all northern hemisphere is same? That is what I just would like to know.
Okay. So a little bit of background is required in terms of the epidemiology of the influenza, and that is how we actually, how WHO decides which strains of influenza are to be given to a particular year for a vaccination. And there is a central lab which collects samples from all over the world, and this is divided in terms of the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. We do not have any kind of differentiation in terms of data from US and Europe and India being in the northern hemisphere vis-a-vis Australia or say South America or South Africa in terms of southern hemisphere. So we don't have any differentiation in those terms, but we do have a differentiation in terms of northern and southern hemisphere. And what is very interesting to note was that before 2009, we used to blindly believe that influenza occurs in the winters. And that is why all of us have been recommending this vaccine before the start of winters when it came to us. But since 2009, luckily for us, we have got a lot of data coming in, which is country specific and which is coming in from India. And what this data has shown? It shows clearly that influenza occurs throughout the year, almost on a continual basis, with a maximal peak occurring in the months of monsoons. Which means that in Delhi and Chandigarh, where I am from, this peak would occur in the month of June, July, August. So it makes sense for us to give the vaccination before the onset of this monsoons, which means April to May is the best time to give this vaccine. Now, if we want to give this vaccine in the month of April and May, we'll perforce have to use the southern hemisphere strain because the northern hemisphere strain by that time is almost on the verge of expiry. We get the northern hemisphere strain now. This is the time when we get the northern hemisphere strain in the month of October, and the southern hemisphere strain comes in the month of April, May. So, A, influenza occurs in tropical countries during monsoons, commonly. The peak occurs in monsoons. B, the vaccine should preferably be given before the peak season, which means April and May. But we must also remember that influenza occurs throughout the year. So as soon as you get the new batch of vaccination, if a child requires the flu vaccine, please give it to them.
Okay. So there is a lot of confusion. The southern hemisphere, we actually officially belong to northern hemisphere.
Yes.
The, the midline of the world is below us. So we are in the northern hemisphere. But because we get it in May, June, so we should use because the northern hemisphere is not available, so we must use the southern hemisphere. Whether that is going to be helpful to our children or not, we do not know. That is a different story. Just one comment from Dr. Kukreja on this. Recently there is an editorial also in the Indian Pediatrics about it, that one of the company has tweaked the recommendation of IAPCOI to say that influenza vaccine be given to all children above 6 months of age and not just high-risk children. So any comment on it?
I think very unethical, very wrong, should not be done.
That's it, leave it. Okay. Now, sir, a few questions general. A lot of people have a lot of questions on IAPCOI. I know that I have been getting those questions in Dabi Jaban mein. A lot of people have been asking me, sir, why this recommendation has been made, why that recommendation has been made. May I ask you one very broad question to all the panelists? It is to all the panelists. IAPCOI clearly makes a sentence, opening sentence, that we do not make recommendations for the children of India. We are making recommendations only for our members. Do you find any peculiarity in this? Are the members to get the vaccine? That's what I just want to know. Is it abdication of responsibility? If IAPCOI is not going to give the recommendations for children of India, who else is going to give? Do you expect another IAP body or pediatrician's body to come up and give this recommendation? This is what you have been members of IAPCOI. Both of you should answer. I think we will not get such a forum again. So Dr. Chitkara and Dr. Kukreja both will answer this question.
You have to give me 2 or 3 minutes to explain the
exactly
both,
2
both
minutes.
the perspectives.
I'm sorry, I am also bound by
Since
time.
I say 2 perspectives multiplied by 2, it's 4 minutes now.
Yeah, okay.
Number one, EPI program is already deeply engraved in this country, which is followed by all members, non-members, other non-pediatricians, government facility. Number one. That cannot be changed unless all the stakeholders decide to change it. So that is one side of the story. New vaccinations which have been licensed by Government of India, not by IAP. They are available as biological products in this country, duly licensed. Do I offer it to those population who can afford it and for their individual protection? Here I am not talking of community. A product is available, licensed. Now these are newer vaccines where there are a lot of ifs and buts questions asked. So when we say that we are making recommendations for our members in office practice, we don't say members or otherwise, children of India, we do not differentiate. We say members who are in office practice, and these are vaccines for individual protections, and these are the recommendations. So clearly about the newer vaccines. Now at the
I think
same,
that
one
answers-
minute,
that
at the same time, we also formulate a policy guideline or a recommendation, because most of the vaccines have evolved from the private sector to the government sector. HIB, MMR, and these are examples. So we give a recommendation to the government so that it can only reach children of India when it is put into the national immunization program.
Okay.
So
This
that
is what I
we are
want to know. If this country needs to get another vaccine in the universal immunization program, what has the IAP COI recommended? Which vaccine should go into the national program? And why, given the reasons, and what action have they taken further to make sure that the government takes that action? Please remember, Government of India is a democratic institution. It is dependent on expert advice. If we are not going to give that expert advice, it will take that expert advice from WHO or whatever it is. So have we given that expert advice that this particular vaccine next should be in the one? And if you have given that recommendation, what actions have you further taken to pursue that matter on a public forum to compel the government to introduce those vaccines in the country?
HIB is one,
Kukreja,
okay.
maybe, I think.
See, this another point, IAP COI has been recommending time to time since the time Dr. Mittal was the member. He recommended HIB when he was the member. Anyway, this is a debate.
I know.
It's okay. It's okay, sir.
I am for it even now. I'm not saying that.
Anyway, so we have been recommending. We have been recommending.
But
MMR.
thereafter, sir.
Then
He was recommended by our group. Thereafter, has there been any
I'll tell
new
you,
vaccine?
there has been recommendation of MMR, there have been recommendation of typhoid, there has been recommendation of pneumococcal vaccine, and the health minister accepted, and there was a sort of, it was in the media, and so these recommendations have been there. The problem is, whenever I have just opportunity to attend one meeting of NTAGI, Dr. Jacob Pulial has attended, I think, many, and I find the government to be receptive to use this vaccine, and I didn't find. And the only thing is, they always tell us there is no constraint of budget. The only thing is, we want to have little more data, and these are the issues which I think there's a little red tapeism where it gets blocked and all that. With technological mission, Dr. Bhan being there, I was thinking that things will be speeded up, things will go fast. But I'll feel even the Gavi, we are entitled by Gavi to use the rotavirus vaccine, we are entitled by Gavi to use pneumococcal vaccine, but we have not taken that grant, not used it. What are the reasons? What stops it? It's beyond me.
No
It's beyond
country
me.
in the world should start vaccination only because of grants, because otherwise you are getting yourself in a very big problem. Grants will be 2 lakh doses, 2 million doses. In this country of 150 million, under 5, that is not feasible.
Sir, at least
anyway, that's beside. Leave that part. We will leave it as that. I think some of the queries, I'm sure there are many more queries about IAP-COI. I am not going to take it further. One last question from the pre-framed question, and then I will take. You know, polio, we have happily achieved a zero status for last 1.5 years or 1 year, 8 months to be precise. Now the government of India is looking to the IAP to tell us, or you people are the experts, what should I do next? What is the option for me to start to make sure that this zero status is maintained? No further vaccination, only continue oral polio vaccination, change to IPV and OPV, or change to only IPV. Out of these four, what is one by one, I think all the, Gaurav, first of all, you can give your comment. What will you expect? And then Cook and Chitkara and Jacob, so that we can finish this part and then I'll have to come to the questions.
So given the fact that we are surrounded by Pakistan and Afghanistan, which are actually still having polio, wild polio cases, there is no way we can stop giving polio
So we
vaccines.
should
So the
not
first
only
option
have army ready, we should also have polio virus.
yes. So there is, we have to continue, in my opinion, we have to continue giving oral polio and IPV. And once at least 3 years.
No, national program. We are not talking of now these IAP, COI recommendations, give IPV, OPV both, that type of recommendations we are not looking for. Please, without any rational reason, I didn't bring it that. Okay. I am asking you national program. The government of India is now looking for the advice, what is the change to be done. I am going to reach that zero or polio eradication status in another 1 year and 4 months. 3 years, what the WHO says, if you don't have any polio, 3 years, you are polio free, you are polio eradicated, you go to the next stage, maintenance stage. What is the recommendation for that?
So from what I understand, at the post eradication, after the completion of 3 years, we should move over to IPV.
IPV. Dr. Kukreja?
See, there is definitely a threat from the surrounding countries as far as introduction of polio is concerned. So we have to be on the guard. We have to definitely keep vaccinating. And what vaccine to choose?
So
either the choice
we
is
have to continue vaccination. This is very important.
There's no difference on opinion on this.
Okay, fine.
Now the question is, there's a threat of that, and secondly, there's a threat that there's a routine vaccination in my country is not up to the mark. That is a second threat. Now, how this is a threat? This is a threat because it leads to circulating vaccine-derived viruses, particularly type 2. That is my second threat. So I'm worried about these two threats. Now, how to handle this? To handle this, I'm not worried about VAP that way because that is not going to lead to repeated infections to the other individuals. My concern is how to handle this. To handle this, I have an option of continuing OPV or I have an option of continuing with IPV. If I continue with OPV, at one time, I have to stop the use of live viral vaccine because in elimination stage or in the eradication phase, even the virus should not be there. So this is my worry. No, I want IPV. Now IPV, suddenly which company is going to make this number of IPV for my country? This is a question. So I must, whatever IPV is available, I should start using. And the second technology I can use is, IPV interestingly is very effective vaccine if given intradermal. So I can use this vaccine intradermal. So out of 1 dose, I can make 5 doses. So I start giving this at least as at the age of 8-9 months, boost of the immunity, and then gradually plan to decrease OPV. This is not going to take 1 year or 2 years. This is going to take at least 3-4 years if companies make large number of vaccine. So ultimately, answer is IPV. And that is the only answer.
And to answer the question of manufacturing, maybe indigenous production?
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Chitkara?
Well, the answer is continue vaccination, and it has to be now IPV in the routine immunization to be started as soon as possible. And in any case, by April 2014, it will be all IPV in the routine immunization. Till that time, we are certified eradicated. NIDs to continue. After that, no oral polio, and the IPV will be Sabin IPV, and it has already licenses for Indian manufacturers have been given.
Fine. Okay. So that is the, we'll leave it as that, and Dr. Jacob does not want to make any comment on it. So I presume either he agrees or he disagrees so strongly that he doesn't want to make a comment on it. Anyway, I have finished our finished time. If I am allowed 5 minutes more, I will try to get these answers also. Flu vaccine question has been already answered, southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere. MMR at 10 years, no problem?
I have no problem, but I'll prefer if it is given at 15 months and then at around 5 years.
That we will,
If not given at 5 years, go for 10 years.
okay. The questioner's answer is problem this thing. Is there any contraindication to give it at 10 years? No. That's it. Preferable to give it earlier, but even if the child has not received, give it at 10 years, there is no problem. Okay. This I will take up a little later. This is a little more problematic question from Dr. Anju, so I'll leave it. How do we give hepatitis B vaccine in premature infants? I think this is textbook thing. Kokreja?
If the mother is, in this case, I'm very keen to have antibody levels. And if the mother is if mother is HBsAg negative, I can wait, give the vaccine after 1 month. So irrespective of the weight, if the weight is less than 2 kg, I'm talking of, let me repeat, if the weight is less than 2 kg, preterm baby, then give it at 1 month. Chronologically, at the age of 1 month, the body reacts to the vaccine, irrespective of the weight at the age of 1 month. But if the weight is more than 2 kg, you can start at birth. And if the HBs positive is there, you have to give the hepatitis B dose as well as the antibodies.
Okay. At 10 to 11 years, will you prefer TD or TDP? Acellular pertussis
So
with
I'll give you a cellular pertussis.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm having pertussis these
I'll
days.
give TDAP
Fine.
vaccine.
all right. I'm not making any comments on it, please. So we just accept whatever is there. 100% breastfed babies, that is the problem usual thing in the rural India. Although we like to believe it, I doubt very much that today, thanks to our very wide reach of these TV and everything, our modernization is reaching the villages very fast. So anyway, but does rotavirus vaccine carry any relevance in purely breastfed babies?
That doesn't
Because
mean
first 6 months we are giving only breastfed, and that is the time to give the rotavirus. Is there any counter for it? I mean, is there any contraindication because breastfed babies should not be given rotavirus?
there is
No, sir, it should
there
be
is
given.
no
Okay, fine, that's what I-
contraindication.
I should be
Breastfeeding protects against rota infection,
But
but
that
that
is
doesn't
not
mean it
a
is
reason.
100% protective.
It does not protect 100%. So if at all you are thinking of giving rotavirus vaccine, which I am not personally recommending, but if you are using it, then there is no reason not to use it if the child is breastfed. Okay. Now this is PCV. I think we have tried to answer this question somewhat, but we still maybe take once more. If the epidemiological data and efficacy of pneumococcal 7 vaccine is questionable, why is it a part of IAPCOI recommendation? I think this we have answered, so we don't need to take it up, rake up again.
7 is an obsolete vaccine. It is no longer available now. It is 13.
Cost effectiveness is an issue only for vaccine. I'm trying to understand this question, Anju. That's why I've taken it last. Cost effectiveness is an issue only for vaccine. There is a question mark on that. Not for labs and surveillance. Labs and surveillance, should there not be a cost effectiveness question? I think no.
I think there is a-
I think no, but you answer it.
So cost effectiveness, for example, in today's Times of India and Hindustan Times, you read, there are only 36% of the angioplasties which deserve to be done.
And only 14%, which were absolutely must.
Must. So I think no one has calculated the cost effectiveness. I think the poor rotavirus goes through a lot of hell.
No. For angioplasty also those cost effectiveness have been calculated. And because for calculating those cost effectiveness, the efficacy has been inflated. The same thing which we do for vaccine also. We inflate the efficacy, so obviously the cost effectiveness becomes manageable. That is what has been done for angioplasty. And now this study tells us that 36% of the angioplasties done were not required and 14% were definitely not required. This is the study which has come from that. So it is the same question. But anyway, for answering Anju's question specifically, for surveillance, there cannot be a cost effectiveness.
Exactly.
A disease in this country, we have got almost all disease pretty prevalent. And if we have got today all the vaccines available, then it is our duty to make sure that we have the necessary epidemiological data to recommend to the Government of India. The reason why Government of India is still not accepting our recommendations is because we do not back it up with adequate epidemiological data. We need that. So there is no question of any cost effectiveness for lab surveillance or otherwise, with clinical surveillance,
Sir,
whatever
may I say a sentence?
The government doesn't
Sir-
take up issues where there's a prima facie evidence also, in
but-
many of the corruption cases.
But
Oh, yeah, that's
surveillance and intervention are entirely two different issues. There is no cost to surveillance because unless you have a surveillance, you cannot plan an intervention which can be cost effective or cost exorbitant. So surveillance is a need of the system. No cost.
Last question. Taking this analogy that today we are asking for all those surveillance data for, these new vaccines. We are asking for cost effectiveness. Were these studies available for the EPI vaccines in this country before we introduced it?
No,
Unjust
sir.
question.
There's no
Unjust
data.
question.
There's no data.
There was no data.
There's
but,
no data.
But
I think the
but-
cynics were not there.
But please remember, measles. Let's say, for example, measles. We knew it was a very endemic disease. We knew it very well. Okay, we knew pertussis was very endemic. We saw a lot of diphtherias. You may not, HIB you don't see. That is what I'm saying. So that is why we need a surveillance data. I'm not saying anything. First, then furthermore, most important thing was the EPI vaccine, each one prevented a disease which was clearly definable clinically. What other new vaccines are doing, like pneumococcal vaccine. It's a vaccine against a pneumonia syndrome, meningitis syndrome, septicemia syndrome, for which there are many, many other causes. So clinical ground, it becomes difficult to say that this is pneumococcal. But pertussis, diphtheria, we could clearly say this is clinical infection. Yeah, if time permits.
No, only one liner. If
No.
children of this,
Each one of the panelists is allowed to ask one question. I have no problem.
if we are so concerned about the children of this country as far as their morbidity and mortality is concerned, and most of the diseases which would almost, quite significantly be affected by our water, sanitation, overall development, which is too slow, how does the moderator suggest to decrease morbidity and mortality under such scenarios
Thank you very much.
and
It's
not
a
using these
question,
vaccines?
It is my comment. It is what I have been asking and all the time I've been saying. I attended one meeting about 4 months back, IAP people. The presentation was, we have vaccine against diarrhea and pneumonia. Diarrhea and pneumonia are vaccine preventable diseases. These are not. These are not vaccine preventable deaths. This is something which we must be very, very clear about. At best, even if you get all universal immunization, the deaths from rotavirus you will prevent, and that will be all immunized. You will be preventing only about 30% of the deaths due to rotavirus, not beyond that. Okay? So diarrhea, the deaths is only 6% is the total rotavirus burden. So don't worry about that. These are not diarrheal vaccines. These are not pneumonia vaccines. These are not meningitis vaccine as such. Right? So this is one thing. We need to emphasize on the so-called non-health issue. Those are water supply, sewage disposal. Yes, we need to make that noise. And that is the one which is really going to prevent the neonatal care. Today only there was a workshop in Chacha Nehru, and we were training the Haryana doctors and nurses for the basic neonatal care, which I think is the right thing to do. Yes, we need to prevent neonatal mortality. Hepatitis B will not prevent neonatal mortality, isn't it? So vaccines are not going to prevent the under 5 mortality, even if you get all the vaccines today available in the world, even if you get all the children, the under 5 mortality will be affected only by about maximum 10 to 15%, not beyond that. So vaccines are not the answer for preventing child mortality. It is the other things, the use of health resources, the sanitation, sewage, etc. that is there. Thank you very much.
No,
I think I've answered the question to everybody's satisfaction. Yeah. Thank you very much. And now, now this clap says that we are not allowed any more time. Thank you very much. Over to the organizers.
Thank you, sir, for a hugely passionate and I dare say inflammatory discussion.
Informative, you have.
Informative and inflammatory, both. There's been, but I would request the panelists and sir to please hold on for 2 minutes so that we can honor them. We have Dr. D.V. Salwan from Hoshiarpur amongst us, and he's come all the way to attend PCNI. I would request him to honor Dr. Mittal, who was the moderator for this session. Dr. D.V. Salwan, please.
यहाँ आ जाते हैं, यहाँ आ जाओ। आ जाओ, Jacob।
Dr. D.V. Salwan from Hoshiarpur to honor Dr. Mittal, please. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I would also request Dr. Salwan to honor rest of the panelists, Dr. Chitkara, Dr. Kukreja, Dr. Pulyal, and Dr. Gaurav Gupta. Dr. Gaurav Gupta. Dr. Kukreja. Dr. Chitkara. And Dr. Pulyal. It's been a wonderful start to the PCNI and everybody's been kept glued to their seats, and it's, like I said, an hour back, heartening to see all of you here. The next talk is going to be on what has been discussed already or alluded to already, that is the current recommendations of IAP-COI on vaccination in infants, and the speaker for that is Dr. Pankaj Garg. Dr. Pankaj Garg, as most of you from Delhi would be familiar with, he is a neonatologist par excellence, working at Gangaram, a very hard-working neonatologist, I dare say, with interest in vaccinology also. And I would invite Dr. Garg to start right away and limit his talk to 18 minutes. 18 minutes. Thank you.
As you can understand that the discussion which had to happen on IAP-COI recommendation has already happened, and now I'm there to present what has already been discussed. The advantage is that many questions which you think can be answered have already been answered, but yes, there may be few questions which I may take the liberty of from my own perspective understanding IAP-COI, if you feel that's what comes to your mind. So, you know that recently the consensus recommendations on immunization from IAP has been published, and I'm sure all of you have read that, and I just highlight few important changes which have happened, so that maybe those who have not got that much of time to read it up understand. Now, IAP says there are only two categories of vaccinations, one for routine use, one for high-risk use. For routine use, there is a chart, timetable which I will be showing. For high risk, as was discussed, something like influenza, meningococcus, Japanese encephalitis, cholera, they come in that category. And their high risk children have been defined, mainly immunocompromised host, you can say leukemias, asplenias, polysplenia syndromes, maybe cochlear implant, healthy child was getting cochlear implant, something like that, which is a high risk situations, chronic renal disorders, chronic cardiac issues, chronic liver disorders, in which special vaccination may be recommended. IAP has also decided to give a timetable which should be given on annual basis, and also try to make recommendation on some grade, which is grade of recommendation, assessment, development and evaluation system. Now, it's not possible to go through all, but these are the major changes which have happened. They have been saying now sequential polio, that means 0 dose polio, and then 6, 10, 14 IPV schedule, then again polio at 6 months and with measles at 9 months. This is called sequential polio schedule, because in the process we are trying to come to total IPV schedule. Hepatitis B, which has been discussed, we have shifted from 6, 10, 14 week schedule to 0, 1 to 2 months, or 6 weeks and 6 month schedule, which is the best studied schedule in the world, which is also a AAP schedule, because it has been seen that the immunogenicity profile with this vaccine is maximum, and also you are trying to cover the vertical transmission even if you don't know the HBS status of the mother, which may not be possible in all deliveries happening in our country. I will discuss rotavirus in detail. Pneumococcus is the next talk in line, so that also in detail, and influenza has already been discussed.